From around the Beltway to around the world, this is the Daily Drum on 96.3 WHUT. Plus, now every Wednesday on WHUT TV, bringing you the information you need that matters most. Better together. Here's Harold Fisher.
Good evening. This is the Daily Drum for Wednesday, December 6th. Here's what's happening. A Prince George's County jury has found County Police Officer Michael Owen Jr. not guilty on all counts in the killing of William Green. Owen shot and killed the 43-year-old man in January of 2020. Just a half hour ago, County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy spoke about the verdict.
There were two people in the car, right? One person's handcuffed, the other person has a gun. One person gets shot, and so the assumption is, oh, this is murder. Well, we have to then look at the fact that we have a police officer who duly arrested someone who did cause several accidents and was high on PCP, or at least had PCP in their system. And so I think when you look at the combination of all of those factors, it does raise questions, some of which we cannot answer because we weren't there.
Owen said he and Green struggled over his service revolver. There are at least 3 people dead after a gunman went on a shooting spree on the campus of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department confirmed the shooter is deceased and that there was no longer a threat to the community. The UNLV campus will be closed for the rest of the day. And 6 people are dead and 2 officers are injured after a shooting spree in Texas. Authorities say the suspect killed 4 people in Austin and injured 2 others. That same gunman is also believed responsible for 2 deaths near San Antonio. Austin police say the suspect killed 2 people around noon while stealing a car and then later killed 2 more during a home burglary. In the district, Mayor Muriel Bowser is expected to announce a major anti-crime initiative tomorrow. She is expected to launch the Real-Time Crime Center. It is expected to monitor some 50 live crime cameras around the city in real time and partner with federal and local law enforcement agencies across state borders. Former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy said he will resign from Congress at year's end. This comes after McCarthy was the first Speaker of the House to be ousted from power in the middle of their congressional term. And Norman Lear, the producer and writer of some of the biggest hits on TV, has died.
Well, we're moving on now to the side, to a deluxe apartment in the sky.
He is best known for creating 1970s sitcoms like The Jeffersons, Good Times, Sanford and Son, and, of course, All in the Family. Lear received 5 Emmy Awards and 2 Peabody Awards over the course of his career. In 2017, he was a Kennedy Center Honors recipient. Lear died at his home in Los Angeles of natural causes at the age of 101. Well, here's a look at our weather now. Clear skies tonight with lows in the upper 20s and low 30s. Tomorrow, cloudy in the morning, clearing in the afternoon. Now, it will be a little bit cloudier, but we should have temperatures in the mid-40s to near 50. Well, coming up, we're sitting down with Prince George's County District 4 Councilmember Ingrid Watson, and later the Reporters Roundtable. Lines are open. Give us a call at 202-319-7810. 202-319-7810. Insight is next on WHUR and WHUT TV.
On the go and on demand, WHUR and WHUT are with you. Download the WHUR app today to get full access to shows, playlists, and our latest contests. To access WHUT on demand, download the PBS app and make Howard University Television your station. Catch up on our WHUT original productions anytime, anyplace on YouTube at WHUT TV. WHUR and WHUT, better together.
DC, Maryland, and Virginia, you might have noticed something a little different on Monday nights at 8 p.m. I'm Angie Ange, our Director of Content here at WHUT. And Monday nights at 8 p.m., we like to call it Must See DMV. All your favorite shows from all your favorite creators focus solely on what makes DC, Maryland, and Virginia so special. So set your clock, and we'll catch you at 8 p.m. right here on WHUT, Howard University Television, telling your stories on your station.
Going beyond the headlines to the deeper issues. 96.3 WHUR and HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Inside segment where your questions and comments matter at 202-319-7810. Join the conversation.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR, WHUT TV, Sirius XM, Channel 141, 96.3 HD2, and 98.3 FM. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. We're at the Reporters Roundtable tonight, but before we get to that, we're talking to a local newsmaker. Prince George's County Councilmember Ingrid Watson joins us live. Councilmember, thank you so much for talking to us.
Oh, well, thanks for inviting me on, Harold. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I want to get to one of the top stories that is just developing. Suspended Prince George's County Police Corporal Michael Owen Jr. was just found not guilty on all counts in the killing of William Green back in January of 2020. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I was surprised to hear about the verdict. Like our state's attorney said, there are many questions to be answered. I know this case has been ongoing for, 4 years?
Yeah.
So, I certainly look forward to hearing more from our state's attorney and a response from the police department. So right now I'm praying for all the families involved and just look forward to getting additional information.
I want to move on to this story about Bowie. The survey by home tech website Automate Life called Bowie, Maryland, one of America's most trusted towns. Bowie listed number 56 out of 60, a city where Americans feel safe by not locking their doors. But Bowie City's acting police chief says he wants people to lock their doors and remain vigilant. Your thoughts about that?
I agree with Chief Preston. I'm happy to hear that my neighbors in Bowie feel comfortable leaving their doors unlocked because they feel safe in their community. But I do suggest they lock their doors to their homes as well as their cars. As I monitor the discussions on Nextdoor, and many residents have had their cars broken into and stolen. So as Chief Preston shared, Bowie is not an island, and most of the people that are committing the crimes are coming from outside of Prince George's County.
Well,
I ask residents to be vigilant.
And to that point, there has been a huge uptick in Bowie City in carjacking, some, I believe, 5 this month, and it's only the 6th of December. And, of course, there was that huge town hall at Bowie State University last week. What came out of that? What would you say came out of the town hall that was most important from your perspective?
So what I really think, one of the goals of the Crime Forum was to create a community think tank, to actually, sit down and discuss and work on the bills to take to Annapolis in real time. So I was very happy to hear the data shared from our chief of police, our state's attorney, our school superintendent, and they spoke about crime statistics and the challenges they have, particularly in holding juveniles accountable as well as their parents. But one of the most significant things that came out of this is the fact that here in Prince George's County, we don't have any residential programs where a young person can be removed from their environment and placed in a structured setting with caring adults, and certainly given the opportunity to change their future for the better by providing the skills, education, and self-discipline needed to become responsible and productive citizens. Because not every bad act deserves prison, but there needs to be a viable alternative to allowing these repeat offenders back on the street.
Your Pick It Up campaign, that is a big quality of life issue. I would argue that a community that has trash in it may also have other issues. Would you agree with that?
Perhaps, and I think, Harold, my biggest goal as a council member for District 4 is quality of life. And I want to ensure that for all residents in District 4 in Prince George's County. So I started the Pick It Up campaign because I received a lot of feedback from residents that they saw where there's a blatant disrespect from others who threw trash on the ground and out of their cars and, just kind of messing up the neighborhood and the community. So my goal essentially was to boost community pride and to help foster community fellowship and bonds. And have neighbors working together to keep their communities clean, but it also fosters a bond between neighbors that look out for each other. So that's a big deal when it comes to keeping Bowie safe. Back in the day, I remember all the neighbors knew each other. They got together. It was a village, really. So I think one thing I love about Bowie is the neighbors looking out for neighbors.
Finally, Councilmember Jolene Ivey is the new council chair. Obviously, for news folks, important. For the council, it's important. But explain why that is more than just inside baseball for the residents. Why does it matter?
The one thing, I would say the most important thing to me that Jolene Ivey brings as council chair is a collective voice. And she is going to really be the person to bring us all together, to stand together and make decisions as a unified body. So I sincerely look forward to her leadership, and I support her, and I look forward to working with her. And of course, all my other colleagues, they're all strong leaders, and they've done some wonderful things in this last year. So just look forward to moving the county forward and doing the things that are important to the residents.
We will certainly be watching. Prince George's County District 4 Councilmember Ingrid Watson, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much, Harold. I appreciate that.
Sure thing.
Have a good night.
You too. Well, now to the Reporters Roundtable. My guests tonight are NBC4 I-Team investigative reporter Tracee Wilkins, Jennifer Thomas, associate professor at the Howard University School of Communications, and Hamil Harris, reporter with the Washington Informer. Lines are open at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. You can X me at hfisher, WHUR, or you can find me on Instagram at Harold T. Fisher. I know everybody is just chomping at the bit with to talk about some of the things that we've already discussed with the council member. Tracee, I'll certainly start with you. Your thoughts about the Michael Owen Jr. verdict.
Well, I think a lot of people are in shock.
Yeah.
I think
surprise.
The state's attorney is one of them, and you just heard from the council member as well, saying that she also was surprised by the outcome of this trial. I mean, I've been following this case from the very beginning. I remember talking with Michael Owen's family, not even just hours after he was killed, having a conversation with them about what happened and who he was and the justice that they wanted to see. And what we have to remember with this case, what was unusual is that even before he was in court for this criminal case, the county settled a civil suit, the largest in the county's history at the time, more than $20 million into this family. This is a huge deal, right? And then you look at that, and then you see that he was acquitted on all charges, right? And this jury, and one thing I would say about Prince George's County juries after decades of covering cases there is that, Prince George's County juries believe in justice. These are predominant African-American jurors who are dedicated to the task at hand and believe the information that is presented to them and take the job very seriously. So I'm sure that the state's attorney is going to be going back through what was presented in this trial. What did they get wrong? What did they get right? And I'm sure that the state's attorney also feels like at the end of the day, she's going to respect what the process is. And even if she disagrees with the jury's outcome, will respect, of course, what the jury has decided here. But yeah, a huge shock. And remember the fallout that followed after this. This happened right before the officers' law enforcement bill of rights was taken to task in Annapolis. And soon after that, we had what happened with George Floyd, and the world just really shifted.
Yeah, it happened 2 months before the world shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the pandemic, and Owen was in jail. He's been in jail for almost 4 years. Yeah. So Jennifer, a lot of moving pieces here, and as Tracee was just suggesting, one of the things you never want to bet on a jury.
No, you don't. And I was thinking that when I heard, like everyone else did, the decision of the jury, this is a jury of his peers. Mm-hmm. And it is in Prince George's County. And I'm sure many listeners, as have I, have been in there when we've been called to jury duty and holding your breath to see if you're going to be picked. So I wondered, what the jury thought. And then, again, as Tracee noted, just what was presented in court. How much of it was determined by the actual evidence and the facts, or how it was actually presented by the attorneys. How was the defense attorneys, did they prove their case better than the state's attorneys based on the evidence that they had, and based on, we have the hearsay. Well, we have the what the police officer said who took the stand.
Right. Yeah.
We don't hear from the victim because he's not here.
And to that point, Hamil, the officer testified in his own defense. These things do happen, but a lot of times, as we know, a lot of defendants will remain silent. The burden remains on the prosecution. But apparently, his testimony may have helped turn the tide.
Well, I think the critical thing, Harold, is remember the environment. You remember the members of the jury. People like to say jury of their peers. That's almost like a legal term. But it may not be the reality, because you're dealing with a jury pool that's tired, that's frustrated with crime, carjackers. I've had a car stolen 2 or 3 times. I can't even count anymore. But again, so you do have a county that has a party by law and order. The question is, did this young man get a fair trial? It comes down to what Ms. Braymore said. It's like, he said versus the person who can no longer speak for himself because he's dead. So, but the bigger picture is, will Prince George's County have programs for young people, as the council member articulated, to give them alternatives than wandering the streets and getting in trouble? And that's the real question.
If I could just add something just quickly here, Harold, what the other thing that was unusual about what happened with the Michael Owen case, it just pointed to a lot of deficits in the Prince George's County Police Department. This is an officer, and I was not surprised that he took the stand, because at one point he was a media relations spokesperson for the police department. I had interviews with him a number of times, but he's also an officer who had shot and killed someone before.
Yes, that's right.
And there were questions about the mental health that he needed. He said, I have mental health issues. I have problems. I need psychiatric help. There were issues with how the department followed up with officers who raised their hands and said, because something happened, I'm having PTSD, I'm having these things that are impacting how I do the job, and we're not being taken seriously. So remember that the chief, this and a number of other issues, they got a brand new chief, they got a brand new manager for the overall safety department in Prince George's County. So a lot of changes happened with this case. So you just have to wonder what in the world happened here. And but at the end of the day, this is the process, and this is how it works. But there were a lot of other things that came out of this case that really changed policing in Prince George's County. And the new chief was charged with filling some of these gaps that were shown because of the Owen case. Moving
on, I want to go back to this Bowie survey, and by Automate Life. I love Bowie. Okay, so let me just say that. But the other, are people really not locking their doors in Bowie? Bowie is still in the DMV, okay? And I know that having, grown up in this area and seen the changes, and yes, I always say Bowie, like a lot of communities, they're always safe until they're not.
Right, exactly. Well, the first thing I always, as I say to my students always, consider the source. I'm not sure who sources
it's a home
the
tech. It's a security company essentially. Yeah.
And so aside from that, I live near Bowie. I'm a Prince George's County resident, so I was happy to hear the report. But I don't know of anyone who goes around this area to sleep unlocked with their doors unlocked. Even these days, if you live in a rural area, people still lock their doors today. So I just thought that was rather interesting. But I was happy to hear the report, and I think a lot of people who do live in Bowie are happy to hear that. Some good news coming in for a change.
Yeah. Hamil?
I just want us to have, it's not a happy feeling story, but people like Bowie, they like the homes, the parks and stuff. Mm-hmm. Why can't that be for the inner Beltway communities? That's probably one of the number one issues. I talk to young people. I have a son that's a 17-year-old, and people want more activities, organized activities, so they can do stuff. And there's still a lack of that activities instead of some of the outer suburban areas. So, again, I think it's a mixed bag. This is one isolated case, but there's still a great big picture, and Tracee's covered this stuff for a long time, and I have too. What's the plan, something new and fresh that can get through Annapolis and not just say we discussed and we heard about it? That's my question.
Well, and let me say this, to the point that Councilmember Watson was making, and the question that I asked about picking up trash. Mm-hmm. If, Tracee, if you don't respect your community enough to pick up the trash, that's the floor, literally and figuratively. That's the floor. And if you can't keep your neighborhood clean, then there may be some other dirty, toxic things going on in your community.
Yeah, I love what the council member said, and it's absolutely true. I got to know during the pandemic some of my now favorite neighbors picking up trash. Mm-hmm. They put out the call and said, let's all go out and clean up and walk the neighborhood. And after that, we became very close friends. And we all are very responsible for what happens in our community. So I just want to say that I think it's an excellent idea that she's, putting these kinds of resources into what's going on in the Bowie community. Prince George's County has always had to focus on things like litter. That's a big issue. The county executive will tell you that when she goes to community meetings, that has been something that people have consistently talked about, is the litter and cleaning it up. And now, of course, crime is at the top of the list of things that people are talking about, too. But just a couple of things about Bowie. Bowie has always kind of been its own place in Prince George's County. And every once in a while, though it hasn't come up in several years, but every once in a while they will talk about leaving Prince George's County to go to one of the other counties that they're nearby, right? There have been, that kind of deal. It's always kind of been its own island. But, it has its own government, it has its mayor, it has its council, and it is a very diverse part of Prince George's County with a long history. And the demographics are changing. But I think that what this is talking about is the sense of community that is still in Bowie. And it's not just in Bowie. It's in other parts of Prince George's County as well. And it also exists in some of the inner Beltway communities in Prince George's County as well. So I think it's really great that some of what is in Bowie has once again been highlighted, as it often is in surveys when they're looking at what's going on in the DMV. Bowie gets a spotlight. It's well-deserved, but it's not the only community where folks feel safe. I mean, I'm from Beltsville in Prince George's County, and many a night we went with our doors unlocked.
but was that this century or the last?
We're not going to talk about what century it was, Harold. We're not going to talk about when it was.
But it is a great place to live.
Yeah.
The area is beautiful there. The homes are beautiful. The neighborhoods. There are great parks. I would love to see more diversity in restaurants in some of the areas and shopping centers. But so it is good to see some good news that's coming out.
Without a doubt. And speaking of Bowie, we're going to talk to Carolyn, who's calling from Bowie on the other side of this break. 202-319-7810. 202-319-7810. I'm Harold Fisher. John Mons is next with the original Quiet Storm. That is on WHUR. We're going to continue with this Reporters Roundtable conversation in just a bit. Lines are still open at 202-319-7810. We'll be back on WHUR and WHUT TV.
On the go and on demand, WHUR and WHUT are with you. Download the WHUR app today to get full access to shows, playlists, and our latest contests. To access WHUT on demand, download the PBS app and make Howard University Television your station. Catch up on our WHUT original productions anytime, anyplace on YouTube at WHUT TV. WHUR and WHUT, better together.
DC, Maryland, and Virginia, you might have noticed something a little different on Monday nights at 8 p.m. I'm Angie Ange, our Director of Content here at WHUT. And Monday nights at 8 p.m., we like to call it Must See DMV. All your favorite shows from all your favorite creators, focused solely on what makes DC, Maryland, and Virginia so special. So set your clock, and we'll catch you at 8 p.m. right here on WHUT, Howard University Television, telling your stories on your station.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM, Channel 141 and WHUT TV. I'm Harold Fisher. We're at the Reporters Roundtable with some of the top stories of the week. My guests are NBC4 I-Team Investigative Reporter Tracee Wilkins, Jennifer Thomas, Associate Professor at the Howard University School of Communications, and Hamil Harris, reporter with the Washington Informer. Lines are open at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Carolyn calling from Bowie. Thanks for calling, Carolyn. What's on your mind? Carolyn, are you there? Carolyn, give me a call back if you can. I want to stick with the Bowie theme for just a bit. Of course, there was the town hall at Bowie State University. That was a big deal. On the same night, there were public meetings in the District of Columbia, where the new police chief, Paula Smith, was holding meetings. I mean, it was shuttle diplomacy in the district. Ward 1, Ward 5, all of this. But one of the things that, and I'll start with you, Hamil, but one of the things that I keep hearing, we heard it from the council member tonight, we hear it in the District of Columbia, we are hearing it in Annapolis with the House Judiciary Committee talking about it, about juvenile crime. And it seems to me that obviously the mayor is trying to do something to address that. I'm sure that one of the first things we're going to see in Annapolis in January, when the General Assembly kicks in, we're going to see some moves to change juvenile laws. Your thoughts on what we're hearing, the common thread?
I hate to say this. It is the common thread that people want to be tougher. They want to enforce juvenile crime. The problem is the one who has a 17-year-old and 3 other children, is that the kids hear it, and they talk at them and not with them. And now they just put metal detectors in my son's high school, so now he's already leaving home at 6:45 in the morning. It's like he might as well get a sleeping bag out there. I'm not being soft on crime, but they're doing stuff kind of like to respond to the media. But what about talking to young people and really digging down deep to figure out what's going on? What is making a child look on TikTok and learn how to steal a car, and nothing's punishing TikTok? It's just punishing the kids. I mean, I just think that people are trying, but it just seems to be not enough. We all know that. But what can be done? Where are the churches? I mean, I cover religion and I'm a minister myself, but sometimes I really get frustrated with our people because the church community, because I don't see enough happening in the afternoon after school. We talk about faith-based initiatives. I see this faith nor based stuff. So again, it's just, we've been down this road so long,
That's true. Jennifer?
Well, and just to piggyback on what my good brother, Reverend Harris said, I think what we see, you asked what the common thread was, and I think I call it like a crime conundrum that we have in the DMV. I think that the common denominator is the bottom line, and that's the resources or lack thereof. Because if you look at everyone that says they need the resources, You have, the mayor talking to Congress saying, we need more support so that we can have more attorneys that try more cases that can help prosecute the juveniles who they say are on the street, and there are too many juveniles not getting harsher crimes, but they don't have enough attorneys to help prosecute. You have programs in neighborhoods that you can't fund because there isn't funding to program for neighborhoods. You have the school programs. Well, where are the after-school programs? Well, we don't pay our teachers enough money. So, they're not willing to put in the extra hours or time. And then you have, then that leads to, well, then let's put in detectors. Well, what about programs, mentorship programs, community programs that many of us probably grew up with? And I think the lack of resources on every level leads to these pockets of missed opportunities. And, then you have those 14 and 13-year-old kids who get involved in the wrong groups, carjacking people to become part of a group or because they have nothing constructive to do.
Tracee?
I think that there are a couple of things at play here. We're seeing, in my opinion, and just from the work that we've done in this space, the chickens are coming home to roost. We have dealt with a prison pipeline, a consistent fueling of the prison industrial complex on the backs of the Black community. What we saw in the 80s and what we saw in the 90s, and how the Black male was targeted in the justice system with extraordinary penalties and long prison sentences, and the influx of crack cocaine into the community and how that impacted D.C., I think did more damage to our families and our communities in many ways than even enslavement and some of what followed after that. We were able to make a comeback from so many injustices in history, but something about what the 80s and 90s did to our community, we are still trying to dig our way out of it in a way that is very difficult. And now we are seeing it with these children. And I got to tell you, if you spend some time on social media, you spend some time taking a look at how our children are interacting with one another, it almost feels like there is no floor. It almost feels like where are the morals that we as a community used to have? When you hear the stories of elderly African-American women being robbed by young men. I was talking with a rideshare driver who said the young men who tried to carjack her just about a week or so ago were calling her Ma. Give me your keys, Ma. Mm-hmm. And she had to say, I'm like your grandmother. Would you carjack your grandmother? We are in a very difficult position, and it's going to take everyone, those who have resources, those who have ability and any kind of understanding of our community and connection to get back involved in it. These are still our children. They are not others. They are still our sons. They are still our daughters. They're still our nieces and nephews. Even if we don't recognize the behavior, we recognize that there is a soul there that needs to be reached out to, and we need leadership that sees that and puts their energy and resources. And I would argue that D.C. does have the resources. It's got a lot of money in this city, more than most. More resources than most.
Reallocation of resources.
It's the allocation.
Well, I would say we've discussed this on this program at least twice a week for the past 3 months, maybe more. But one of the common threads that we're hearing is that these children are the grandchildren of the survivors of the crack epidemic. And that it's not, that this is a trickle-down effect where the loss that the grandparents experienced in the 80s, whether they were addicted or were victims of addiction, and then they had children and were not able or willing to be responsible, and then those children had children who were what we're seeing now, some of them. But then you have, as we saw, the the mother of the 12-year-old a couple of weeks ago who turned her son in. That, what a novel idea.
Right.
You know,
Right.
number one. But then, and I disagree with Hamil, where at least when we talk about talking at versus talking to, last month, county executive in Prince George's County and the county state's attorney had that teen town hall. I think it was at Flowers High School, where they were listening. But they were saying what we already know. They were talking about social media, parental responsibility, and directly or indirectly, what Tracee was talking about, morals. Okay, we know the issue. But, and this may be a stretch of a comparison, today's social media was yesterday's telephone.
No.
I'm gonna- yeah, I-
So I gotta let me step in right there, because when we talk about social media, we have got to put a full stop right there and sit on that.
But that's my point. When I was a kid, when you were a kid and you were on the telephone, your mama came downstairs and said, "Time to get off the phone."
It's different.
But they're saying get off social media now, but they can't.
But we
do
have
that.
So there are a couple of things. First of all, we've got to remember January 6th. What happened with January 6th, that insurrection and that attack on democracy in our capital, in our federal government, was fueled through social media.
Right.
So imagine what it's like to be a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old at home all day, not going to school, not seeing your friends, and you have the same tool that caused that insurrection in your hand.
But that's my point. We need
Yeah, it's
to
in there. Take it out of their
take
hand.
them, but we can't.
Well, that's the thing. because-
We can't seem to do that.
Well, I think because you have to realize we're dealing with a generation of children who were born, as we say, with the phone in their hand. When they came out of the womb, whoop, they could create a TikTok, right? And we talk about, from the 80s, and I was here at Howard during that crack epidemic, riding the buses, a financial aid scholarship student, and I'll tell you the truth, I was not afraid, really, because I knew if the crackhead on the corner wasn't really trying to get anything from me. He may ask me for $1, but now I'm in D.C. and I am quite nervous here on the campus, walking to my car at night. I don't come into the district unaccompanied if I can help it, and it's a different climate. But I definitely agree that it's the influence of social media and what you can build a bomb. Some of the things that we see are happening overseas. Terrorist groups, they're uniting on social media, disinformation campaigns. There's so much negativity. But to your point, I agree. If there were some way to disengage these kids, but you cannot get them to focus. And I'm teaching them. You can't get them to take that
short
phone
attention
out of
Because
their
they are
hand.
being targeted. And
Correct,
they are
absolutely.
being targeted. And one of the things that we just did this with the News 4i team, we did an investigation into gun violence and specifically focused on youth. We had a roundtable conversation with kids in the city who are doing the right thing and talked to them about how they feel about what's going on in their peer group, and they're just as afraid and just as angry and frustrated as all of the adults who are looking around like, what's going on and where is the justice system and all of this, and where are any of the systems to help get these kids back on track and get their lives back while they still have a life to get back. But the bigger point here is that these companies are not being held responsible. Social media is like a neighborhood, but it's a neighborhood with no constitution.
Correct.
It's a neighborhood with no real rules and regulations.
No
And
police.
these kids are making it up as they go while they are also being targeted. And it's an influx of bad information. It's an influx of a negative feed. It's an influx of them being sucked into. And the difference between what's happening with these kids right now, when we're talking about the importance of social media and the violence that we're seeing, is that if somebody picked on you at school, or if somebody tripped you up, or if somebody embarrassed you, or somebody talked about your mother, there were maybe 2 or 3 other kids who saw it, but you can move on. Here you have an audience of practically thousands.
Yeah.
And these things happen, and these kids are out on the street the next day after one another. So they talked about conflict management when we were growing up. It is much worse now because now you're talking about PR management and how do you deal with any of these things. So it's a much larger issue that the government and the school systems, everybody has to. The question is, do they want to deal with it?
Well,
is it important enough?
And they don't. That's why they have them in their hands all the time.
Well, hold on, Hamil, and this is directed at I wanted you to respond to this, and then I need to go to the phone lines. Last week, on our Take Back Our Community Thursday, something we do every Thursday here, one of our guests said something that was truly profound, and she said it takes a village to fix this. Okay, yeah, well, we've been hearing that for years. But then she said, but what if the village is toxic? That was profound, Hamil.
But listen to this thing, the toxicity of the village, we don't even know. We're asleep. My own son, I often listen to what in the world is going on there. It used to be Grand Theft Auto. Now they got a new GTA came out. And they more things. And so they learned about automatic weapons. They learned to beat people with the computer stuff. And mom and daddy may be asleep or whoever's in your house. And so a lot of this birthing of these ideas that are very toxic and hurtful, it starts with a one-on-one. Johnny's really studying tonight. Well, yeah, right. Check what Johnny's looking at. And again, it's just it's almost breeding this thing, and then the dark web. And these are the heroes. It's hard for football coaches to even get players to play ball now. Yeah. If you don't have enough because they're not used to being outside in group sports and group things. It's all individual. So this is another area that we have to give some money to try some new things because it's a big question mark as to where do we go from here.
Yeah. Let me go to the phone lines, 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Patricia, thanks for hanging on. Calling from Bowie. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Thank you so much, Harold. I was listening in, and I caught the last tail of the Bowie conversation, but just wanted to add to the concerns I see as a Bowie resident. I know some of your guests were speaking on Bowie in a beautiful place, and Bowie has changed, and not for the better. From the shopping centers that we see to the type of businesses that our council members that are allowing the businesses to come in, there's a concern that the community has. I also see that there's a lack of consideration and follow-up through by our various council members from this particular ward who manages Bowie. So there's a lot to discuss. And I also heard you all speak about our children. And unfortunately, my grandson is one of those children who have been bullied in the Bowie school system. And we've met with the new superintendent of schools. And there's still challenges that our school has. And I hear you all talk about what we're hearing and what we're seeing. But what are the solutions? These are the conversations we need to have. We bring this up constantly, but I don't hear anyone speaking about solutions, tangible solutions that are going to bring communities back to a place where at least we're functioning as individuals who care about one another, school systems who care about our children and not neglect them by not carrying through on things that they should be doing, and holding those adults accountable when you have degrees behind your name and not just saying I have a degree, but what are you there for? What are you there for? Serving the community and the children that are in the school system. So, what I'd like to hear, and even from the Bowie State follow-up, is that what are solutions? What are going to be the solution-driven things that we're going to hear? We have conversations. We say the same things over and over again, but we have to do something.
Yeah. Tracee, to the point that you were making about the I-Team conversation, investigation with the young people, what did they tell you was the reason why they were not part of the problem?
So I think that there were a couple of things that were at play here. These, the kids who we interviewed came out of the Deanwood Media program. All of the kids who we talked to lived in some of the came from Ward 7, Ward 8, where there is more gun violence than any other part of Washington, according to police statistics. They hear gunshots pretty much nightly, right? Mm-hmm. They've seen shootings. They have witnessed shootings. But these were kids who were... So this is the thing. If you live in a community that is a poorer community than, let's say, Upper Northwest, it doesn't mean that you are automatically void of morality, right? So these are kids whose parents are active in their lives. They have mentors who are working with them. They have people who are making sure that they're getting to the programs that can pour into them. They're developing in these programs. They're getting opportunities. And they're focused on their studies. And so it's a mixture of this is something that they want for themselves and that they have a support system. The issue is kids who don't have that in them, for whatever the reason may be. I mean, you can have a situation where you've got parents who feel like they are pouring into the child, but something just isn't clicking.
Yeah.
We've seen good kids, right, who have ended up in court and, you know, they shouldn't be there, but they're there and they're in a bad situation because they got involved with a bad crew. You know, all parents are doing as much as they can to hope that their kids are making good decisions. But I would say that at the end of the day, that was one of the consistencies with all of the kids who we talked to in that group. What we're finding, though, is that for most of these kids, I mean, look at what we just learned about DC truancy, right? Like, nearly half the kids in DC schools qualify as truant.
Truant, yeah.
And the systems that are in place to hold these kids accountable, for some reason, they're not making it through those systems or to those systems. So we're asking questions like, well, what? The policies that they're supposed to be going to court, that they are, you know, that there's a possibility of them going to do. And so somewhere along the line, some adults and some decision makers are deciding that that's not the best decision. So then what is?
Well, and obviously, because truancy is not something that just happened during the pandemic. Truancy has been a problem in the DC public school system for decades. Yeah. Okay, so let's, I know this was because when my father worked in the truancy program after he left the Washington Teachers Union presidency office. This was back in the 80s.
Yeah.
He was complaining about it then. So there was a ball that was being dropped in the 80s that no one has picked up, and indeed now in 2023 is allowing to not just pick it up, but roll it across the floor.
It feels like what has been consistent is that there are parts of this city that folks have accepted won't meet the mark, and that's okay.
That's the dropping of the ball.
Yeah.
And until leadership decides there's no part of this city where it's okay for our children not to meet the mark, we're going to have these issues. This is about an overall arching idea of what is important to us. We talk about the morality of the kids. What about the morality of government? What is important to us?
Yeah.
And I think that's
Hold on real quick. Patricia, thank you so much. Let me, before I get another comment from my panel, Tony, you've been patient. Hank calling from Temple Hills. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, go right ahead, please.
I would like to say that all of the people that have spoke very eloquently, but it's economics. And when I say economics, when the money's not coming into the stores because the people are afraid to go to the stores and stores continuously close up and the bottom line doesn't meet, it's going to fix itself. But the answer to that everybody's trying to figure out is the vocational schools. But the men that I know are getting old. A lot of them aren't in the capacity where they have the time to vote and take that type of risk, because it's a great risk. I used to work with them in D.C. I'm retired. When I say work with them, I'm talking about straight out the halfway house. I taught them everything that I could teach them. I said, I can't control that you're not getting paid but when you leave here, you're going to be able to make it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Tony, thank you so much. Jennifer, you were going to say something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just following from what the caller said, and that was the first statement I was making was about the bottom line and the resources or lack thereof. But I think to some of the points that have been made when we talk about solutions and we talk about in D.C., how are we going to solve these problems, or how are we going to solve the problems in the schools? And we talk about cameras, more cameras that can capture faces in stores, that can capture license plates, that, it's a Band-Aid situation and a Band-Aid solution. And to what Tracee said, when you talk about the communities and how the communities are changing and the resources that the communities need, I was going to make the point earlier. I have a good friend who's an educator, an administrator in an inner city school. And the problem is that, to your point that you were saying earlier about the parents and the grandparents from the 80s, many of the parents are not invested for whatever reason. If they have to work, they can't be home to take their child to an after-school program. So therefore, they have to trust that their child is doing the right thing. Well, the child is home by themselves, so they're on the computer. They're on their phone, looking into social media, getting into things they don't need to get into, and no one's there to hold that child accountable to make sure the child is doing the right thing. It's a domino effect, I think. And so when we talk about, before we can really grapple with solutions, we have to recognize what the problem or problems are. And I think that's always the first step.
Real quick, let me go back to the phone lines. Yvonne calling from Bowie. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mr. Fisher, how are you?
I'm doing just fine.
I'm very puzzled about the police officer who was acquitted today.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was indicted 4 years ago.
Right.
And he spent 4 years in jail. So I want to know what turned the tables like that he was acquitted. It's very strange.
Well, I would say, first of all, the time that he spent in jail had nothing to do with the acquittal.
I know that. I know that already.
Okay. Well, it seemed like you were trying to draw on.
I feel like he's very guilty and he needs to be in jail.
Well, apparently the jury did not. And that's where we are.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I honestly don't.
Okay. Well, Yvonne, thank you for calling. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Go ahead, Tracee.
Yeah, no, I'm sure she's not alone. I mean, there are going to be a lot of people who have questions about what happened here. I mean, you have to think about what the county did, right? I mean, that was something. Before going to criminal court, before having his trial, they signed that check over, right? And I mean, that was unbelievable. And so, and remember who the county executive is. She's a former prosecutor.
Mm-hmm.
So she looked at the evidence, her attorneys, and they were like, yeah, no, we're going to go ahead and sign this check. And so for this to happen, it is a shocker.
Yeah,
it is a shocker because of normally civil suits are taken care of after a criminal trial.
Right.
So for it to happen before. And this is a jury who, this is a pool that for 4 years, they've seen the stories, they've, heard what happened with him. I mean, there were questions about the possibility of this jury not being fair because of even recent reporting covering the Prince George's County Police Department in a press conference that had happened just before the trial began. The defense was saying, I don't know that this can be an impartial jury, but look at what happened here. So, yeah, lots of questions about what happened inside of that court.
Yeah, and what's going to happen to Owen now?
Right.
Yeah. Well, remember, he was a minister. And a number of people in his church were supportive of him. I'm not sure if they're still there now, but I know I interviewed them when this all first started. There were a lot of things happening in his life outside of just the police department. He's not originally from the area, but who knows?
But my question is, okay, you've been acquitted. Do you want your job back?
Right.
What happens? What is the police department going to do about that?
He's suspended without pay.
Right. So.
And so this is the other thing that has to happen. So because he was suspended without pay, he's due. He can have a trial. He can have a trial board. Right. So afterward, now the department has to take a look at everything and decide whether he had violated department policy or not, and that's a whole other procedure. So that is a very interesting question. If he wants to keep working for the Prince George's County Police Department, he surely, he's suspended. He is not been fired.
Right.
I would like to know what members of the jury say now, after the case is finished, what their viewpoints are, what made them It took 2 hours or less.
That was quick.
You know,
I will tell you from folks who were inside of that court that the feeling was the defense presented a complete case and a very difficult. And as a reporter who's been inside of those courtrooms, and I wasn't there for this whole, but I talked to a lot of folks who were, there were people who were saying, look, if I had to bet, the defense really did present a very good case. And, you know, the state has, you know, the burden.
Yeah.
The state has the burden.
Yes, that's absolutely
So at the end of the day, if the jury went back and took a look at the list of things that they were supposed to check off, and the feeling was, the state didn't quite meet this without a question of doubt.
and he was great
Yeah.
on the stand and knew, you know,
Yeah.
what your point was.
Let me go back to the phone lines. Go ahead, Hamil, real quick. Go ahead.
Where is the program? It used to be a word called rehabilitation, rehab.
Yeah.
That left with Ronald Reagan, you know. But again, because he owes this, quote, debt to society, remember those terms, you know? Why can't he be in charge of maybe the police, such and such football league or something like that? You know, while it's fresh on his heart that he has a second chance. There used to be programs like that. We saw movies called The Longest Yard. You remember all those Burt Reynolds kind of movies where the guys were playing ball and doing things.
So you're suggesting that in the wake of this, that Owen be given an opportunity to do something else within the police department that
they're going to have to do something to give back to the community. That's something that we just gloss over. You don't see community service like you used to. The only thing you see is picking up trash along the highway.
Yeah, well, he's been acquitted.
So he doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah, he doesn't have to do anything. And the question is, might he want to? Hold on. I got to take this last call. D calling from Upper Marlboro. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Yes, hi. I just want to speak on, I'm an educator, and I just want to piggyback on the associate professor's position regarding the phone technology. And I also want to note, I've been an educator for 30 years, and I've totally noticed a difference in regards to our students and as well as parenting. And I truly believe and have seen that it all starts at home. And I think, basically from my observation, a lot of us are failing our students. And a lot of these things, like Miss Tracee said, like morals. Morals don't come innate. Morals and things are taught. And unfortunately, you know, with the technology, and I work with children with at different ages, preschool children, they're having the devices.
D, you've got 30 seconds. I'll let you finish your point real quick.
Okay. I think the issue really is the lack of parenting and the lack of support.
Yeah. I think you make an excellent point, something that the students talked about during that teen town hall in Prince George's County a month or so ago. I want to thank all of you, Tracee Wilkins, Jennifer Thomas, and Hamil Harris, for talking to us with this spirited, muscular conversation. Always, I appreciate it. Well, finally tonight, a little thought about Bowie being one of Maryland's safest cities. Congratulations. It is a good feeling to live in a place where you feel safe. But remember, you don't have to look far at some of the safe communities in the DMV to realize that anything can happen anywhere. Stay vigilant. That's the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, December 6th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.
This program was produced by WHUT and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. For more information on this program or any other program, please visit our website at WHUT.org. Thank you.